Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream. Are you living in a political filter bubble? Well, there are quite a few apps for that. But how much can technology do to get us out of our echo chambers?
I'm Didi Das. I'm an engineer at Google, and I'm in the stream.
A slew of new apps aimed at exposing users to opposing political views were developed after the divisive 2016 U.S. presidential election. Here's a look at just a few. You can download Escape Your Bubble. That's a Chrome extension that inserts articles into your Facebook feed after asking, who do you want to understand better? Another extension, PolitEcho, promises to show you the political biases of your Facebook friends and your news feed based on the political pages that they like. And for a voyeuristic experience, you can try Flip Feed on Twitter, which swaps out your feed for an anonymous feed with a different political perspective. So how much responsibility do technology companies have in getting people to see the quote-unquote other side? Well, here to help us discuss, we're joined in the studio by Mustafa Al-Barmawi, a digital media and marketing expert, Amanda Crowell, a professor of educational psychology at Hunter College, and Noah Millman, senior editor at the American Conservative. Welcome to the stream, everyone. I want to get started with an example so we can lay this out for everyone. This is a viral blog post from October. It's on my laptop here. It's entitled, "Why I'm Voting for Donald Trump." So it was shared 1.5 million times online. And as someone, Mustafa, who spends a lot of time on the internet, and I work on a team of people who spend a lot of time on the internet, we had never seen this until you alerted our team about it. Had you seen it?
No, I never seen it.
And why is that? Are we all operating in a filter bubble?
I think we are, yes. This actually was very alarming to me. I was just interested in seeing how Trump and Hillary was running their campaign, and you know, being a liberal from New York, I've been in my own New York, I'm with her filter bubble, and I never actually seen anything about with that kind, or let's say from Fox News or any conservative media appearing on my Facebook feed. And as I'm going through the analysis of what are the most popular articles about Trump, this one popped up, and I was like, it was just from a random blog on WordPress, and I was surprised, 1.5 million times. That's a lot of share.
Did you find the article itself?
Go ahead, Noah.
I was just curious.
I actually did. I thought it had some really compelling points, and it was. I had some questions, and I thought it's some valid opposing views that I can talk about, and it's unfortunate that it didn't appear on my feed.
So after you found it, then did you share it on your feed?
No, I did not.
Okay, why not?
Because I didn't think it was share worthy. Also, Trump had won already. It was about why I would choose Donald Trump, and Trump has already been chosen, so it was a little too late. But I wouldn't share it, because usually for me, I would maybe share it and comment that this is interesting. I shared it on my article, which has been shared a lot, and I thought it was noteworthy, but at the time it didn't make sense to share it on Facebook.
Noah, is it something that you had run across? I know that you're not on Twitter. But is it something that you had heard about?
Because it would eat my life if I were on it. Yes, I had. I think I actually read it. I'm not totally sure. But the title sounds familiar. But that in itself is a little bit of a, that tells you something in and of itself, that what I'm reacting to is the title. My impression is that most of the things that people share, frequently they haven't read. And that what you're really sharing is headlines and signifiers that, I agree with this sort of point. Tells you something about sort of what people are really using social media for, whether it's for communication or more for self-expression.
Excellent point there, because this is a tweet we got. This is Gladiator in Heels. That's her Twitter handle. Given that most news is consumed online, she says, just how do you ensure the different viewpoints when logarithms determine your news? And that's something, algorithms really, is something that we have discussed here on the stream quite a bit. But Amanda, because people do get their news from online, we talked about these social media tools that will help them burst their filter bubbles. Do you actually see those as helping?
I do think that they help, but I think they help solve the problem that was created by Facebook in the first place. And I think that that's what they can do. I think to get any deeper than that, it has to get to where you as a person commit to actually considering the perspective of the other side, not just the headlines, but read the articles and say, I think there's some validity in that, and I don't really agree with this part, and that conclusion feels like it's not supported by the article, and then talk to somebody who does feel like agrees with the other part of it, and have that conversation with them. And you'll find that while we can respond very viscerally to the headline, like I disagree with that, you're not going to respond so viscerally and so sort of vehemently and wholeheartedly to a person who has a perspective and a history and stories to tell around why they feel the way they do. And I think that the deeper solution comes from that.
Noah?
Yeah, I think people used to be sort of quite cynical in a less partisan way about media. People would assume, whatever the papers print, they're doing it just to sell papers, and therefore everything's more sensational than it needs to be. I think perversely people are somewhat less cynical, actually, about their neighbors, their Facebook friends sharing material. And this goes back before Facebook. We all have that shut-in aunt who was forwarding articles that she clipped by email before Facebook existed. And Facebook has sort of magnified that. I think it's a cognitive challenge to tell people, well, don't trust ordinary people either in some level, and take the same kind of jaundiced attitude. And where do you place your trust then?
I don't know if I think that that's cynicism as much as I think it's about opportunity. The thing that Facebook did that they did for their own reasons but has had this outcome is they haven't provided us with any opportunities to sort of experience or to come across or that confirmation bias, which is the thing where our brain seeks out the things we already think and then builds up from that as a heuristic because there's too much stimulus for us to understand all of it.
And that's something that everyone experiences.
Oh, yes, everyone since the dawn of humans. That's because the world that we live in is too stimulating. You have to narrow down onto something, and your brain seeks out the thing that feels familiar because we know for sure it exists, And so then we take that little nugget and we build understanding on top of it. That's been happening since the dawn of time, or at least since the dawn of humans. The solution to that psychologists will share with people who are worried about it is, well, go and be on the lookout for the other perspective. And when you see it, engage with it. That's the big solution. It has amazing impacts on the way that we communicate with each other and the way we write and all kinds of stuff. But that's not possible
that's a rare
anymore.
thing for people to do.
This is what I'm saying. Sorry, thank you for that. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Actually, the point that you both made, Noah and Amanda, is a point that we actually got via an app creator and a video comment. This is Nick Lum, and you guys both made the point that this is something that's been happening since before the dawn of time. This is Nick, and he says, social media is definitely making it worse. Have a listen.
Filter bubbles are not exclusively an online problem, but technology is making them worse. It used to be that you'd get to a restaurant or bar and be waiting for a friend, and you'd look around and you'd notice the people around you in the real world. But now, within 5 seconds, you've got your phone out and you're on Facebook, or you're reading from your favorite news site. Technology has made it easy for us to surround ourselves in our filter bubble 24/7 in a way that previously wasn't possible.
So no, I'm wondering, I see you nodding there. I do want to bring Mustafa in here because I love that comment, and this is actually the app that he created, Read Across the Aisle, knocking down filter bubbles with a simple nudge. You can see it here on my screen. But the point he made, I wonder if it's true, because before social media, before mobile phones, going into a restaurant doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to engage with someone else there and then get into a political argument.
It's true. You could just use your, you could be on newspaper. You don't have to get on the political argument. But I think he had a good point about, actually, its content consumption has become a lot easier, and that's probably what he's alluding to. They can find content anywhere, and it's a lot of content recently, especially on Facebook, and that's probably what the point he was touching upon. But also to Noah's point earlier about getting an email from your aunt. I think Facebook exacerbated this because when you get that email from your aunt, you know it's your aunt and she's doing this because she's X and Y. But with Facebook is that you get a lot, like you're only exposed to content that you engage with without knowing that Facebook filtered this content for you, and that's the danger. People woke up when, the day after election, and people woke up and they were really surprised that Trump, they were really shocked. And I wasn't shocked because I've already looked at both campaigns. Trump, a lot of people believe that even Barack Obama said Trump will never be president. A lot of people believe that Trump will not be president, but Trump was extremely popular.
That's not a matter of a filter. I mean, that's, that was pretty much just about everybody observing the election at almost any level, including Trump himself. I think I agree that everything that everybody's been saying and that I've been saying about how technology has exacerbated this. It's in some ways the flip side of the ways in which technology has made people who would otherwise be separated because they're small affinity minorities able to connect. So there's a good and a bad side of it. But I don't think we should lose sight of the ways in which there are deep roots in the real world for these divisions. Roots that have to do with changes in the economy, roots that have to do with changes in the way media is structured and the way our political parties are organized. America's political parties 40 or 50 years ago were much less polarized, and that was an accident of history, and ideological sorting has taken place over the past generation that has made the Republican Party much more right-wing and the Democratic Party consequently somewhat more left-wing. There's also been a dramatic change in the media, the rise of conservative alternative media, which sort of based its entire argument on the notion that what people had historically seen as nonpartisan and objective was in fact ideologically liberal, and therefore you can't trust it. You have to turn to our sources. I think that changed people's habits of the way they thought about authority and which institutions they can trust before technology came along. To some extent, this is plugging into some things that have much deeper roots. So
Noah, picking up on what you said there, then it begs this question. I'm pulling up on my screen here 3 different articles, sites where you can go. Some people might call them liberal-leaning, others might just call them mainstream media. So this is The Guardian, and an attempt for people to burst their bubble by giving the conservative side. Here's another one, a roundup of conservative media. Trump bites back at the liberal press. That's just one roundup. This is Slate. And this last one is a newsletter that people can sign up for, Right Richter. I am wondering, though, do you think that this is something that scans both sides? Is this just, quote unquote, liberal media or mainstream media offering this? Or is this something that's also seen from conservative media? Are they also giving a roundup for people to see the other side? And Noah, feel free to jump in here if you know the answer to that, because I'm curious.
The answer to everything. I think that I don't want to speak for anyone but myself or people I speak to, but the impression that I get from dealing with people in the conservative media world, I think their belief is that they understand where liberal and left-wing commentators are coming from a lot better than the other way around. And I think there's some truth to that. I think there is a tendency on the left to sort of look at conservative arguments as being not really arguments at all, as being based in sort of atavistic motives and unconscious prejudices rather than actual beliefs or arguments. But I do think that that's a problem on both sides, and I think it's extremely common on the right for people to simply dismiss anyone coming from the left out of hand. It's frankly a bigger problem among people who consume conservative media than among people who are involved in conservative media. If you go to any conservative commentator's Facebook feed or their Twitter feed, you'll see a lot more furious behavior by the commenters than by them themselves. And I think the same thing is true on the left, that you see a lot more crazy talk in the comments.
Yeah, but I do think there's crazy talk on both sides. Because I
agree.
Yeah, I mean, because I live in the with her bubble with Mustafa. We live there together. But I myself, because I did wake up shocked on election day, just shocked, completely shocked. I have since then started they don't ever show up in my feeds, although they could now if I get the app. But I go and I read the conservative stuff, and I do find myself sometimes unwillingly or unwittingly on a liberal, super duper liberal leaning side, and I don't see that the furor and the vehemence and the name calling is any less intense on either side of it. And I'm not sure that you said this, but if you did, I do want to say that I disagree with the idea that liberals hear the conservative perspective and immediately think of like, oh, they're just being ideological, or they must be a fundamentalist Christian. Because, I mean, at least the people that I know in my little bubble do read and try to understand, maybe more so since the election when we all had this big wake-up call.
Right.
But since then, certainly, and I think before then, had we known, I don't think anybody's interested in having a country that falls apart at the seams. And I think we're all interested in figuring out what to do about this. And what I think the takeaway is that the thing to do about it is to let go of the created realities that we get from Facebook and the media and start having conversations with people.
So I like what you said there about the created realities, and no one is interested in this country falling apart. I think that that is a blanket statement that everyone could agree on. But I want to throw a little bit of a different perspective in here. So there are two tweets here. This one is from Tawhid Mahmoud. He says, "I've more or less given up on the idea of consuming conservative media for the sake of my own sanity. I'm always up for a friendly chat with red cap wearing Republicans, though. Much more productive in my opinion." So that's one view. But this other view takes a stance that a few people online are telling us they feel. This is Michelle. She says, as Son of Baldwin once said, that's a Twitter handle here, and you can see this quote here, "We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist." Mustafa, I'm going to throw this one to you because there are a lot of people saying this to us. They're saying maybe filter bubbles aren't such a good thing, and maybe dialogue isn't such a good thing if the other person that you're dialoguing with, quote unquote, doesn't agree with fundamental aspects of my humanity.
So I have a hard time believing that, to be honest. And I think these people are not the majority. These people are just very few. And I like to believe that humans are inherently good people. Yeah, I just have a hard time believing that, there are that many people that don't believe in my existence. Maybe they have their own biases and they are uncomfortable with maybe my existence. And if I talk to them and they get to know me, they will probably be more comfortable with my existence. So I'm definitely all for having the conversation and being exposed to uncomfortable and views out of my comfort zone, and I'm definitely happy to take that conversation anytime.
Could I build on that?
Please, yes.
Okay,
please.
so I also just want to say the problem is that we can't, the problem that we're currently having is that we try to have even the first conversation about anything and things fall apart, but that means that the courageous conversations where you actually get down into what is race relations in America and how do we balance out respect for the police with structural racism and all of the other really big issues are totally foreclosed to us until we are able to, it doesn't matter whether we can go there, we have to go there or there's no hope. And so to a certain extent, if you're not willing to go there and be uncomfortable, which is what they're essentially saying, which is if you're going to make me that uncomfortable, I'm not going to go there. That is essentially saying, then I will not resolve this. We cannot resolve this.
No.
The there that you have to go to is sometimes actually quite far away. I mean, I have, since I'm involved in film and theater, and since I'm also involved in conservative media, I have a very sort of barbelled feed in my bubble. I see stuff from the right and I see stuff from the left. But I don't know personally any families who are Syrian refugees. And I don't know personally anyone who has lost someone to opioid addiction. And and those are the kinds of things that dominate certain people's lives and certain communities' lives. And what are the odds of people seeking that sort of thing out? I think it's a big burden to put on every individual. I think that actually the opinion leaders of the country owe it to the rest of the country to some extent do that job. On both sides.
I like that you said it's a big burden.
Not denying anybody's individual responsibility.
Right. But it is a big burden. Some people are telling us exact same thing. This is Elizabeth on Facebook. She says, I think people have a right to go online without having to constantly deal with racism, misogyny, and other hate being spewed at them. People don't owe others an audience for their hateful views or ugly attitudes. Amanda, I know that you wanted to get in there and respond to something that Noah was saying. Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm going to say I'm realistic.
Okay.
Which is, what people say about themselves. I think it doesn't matter if it's pessimism or optimism. It's what needs to happen. And I love Humans of New York, which is a guy who goes around and takes pictures of people and shares their stories. And he went to Michigan and took pictures and talked to people in Michigan in this county that unexpectedly went for Trump, and tried to wasn't asking them why they were being what they thought politically, but instead just, what problems do you have? What life have you lived? And those kinds of connections, like you said, you don't know anybody who has an opioid addiction. It's not hard to hear a story about that and have it touch you and help you realize, when you do know somebody who has an opioid addiction, it's crushing, and we've all been crushed by something. I think there's I truly believe we're more alike than we are different. That's what I really think is true. I think that we've put so many layers between us and other people, and we've allowed these companies to sort of filter for us and stop us from realizing that. And if we were able to really connect with people on that level of our families and our experiences, I think that Syrian refugees would stop being scary to people. Muslims would stop being terrorists. Whatever it is that people immediately jump to because they have zero lived experience in this, would fall away, because that's what happens when you have lived experience.
It is interesting you say that, though, because on my feed and others that I know who happen to be Muslim, there are people who will say hateful things on our feeds, knowing that we are of that persuasion, but they say you're one of the good ones. So we're still going to make a blanket statement about other people. So that does still happen. But Mustafa, I want your thoughts on this conversation. Do you fall in the realistic, optimistic, or pessimistic view on whether or not you think filter bubbles are getting worse?
I think I want to just clarify, the filter bubbles are not conservative versus liberal. There are actually many bubbles within conservative bubble,
so we have
which is a bigger bubble.
Circles right
there are also within the liberal bubble, there is the far right, there is the far left. And to your point earlier, there are certain people, probably I would stick to having a conversation with the center. It's probably going to be harder to have a conversation with the far right or the far left.
Yeah, absolutely. There are absolutely jerks.
It's also going to be impossible to have a conversation with someone who doesn't believe in my existence or who labels me with something before I even have a conversation with. To your question, I think I'm optimistic. I think that we're talking about technology, that this is something new that we're all dealing with. This is something that we never had before. And the same way we built a great, I'm talking here about maybe Facebook and Google, and I'm trying to say, being a technologist myself, I'm saying we, but I think the same way we created this big, massive thing that connects us all together, it have negative impact. I think we can always tackle these negative impacts and can make it better. And Facebook mission is to really open, to connect and help improve the world to be more connected and open. And I feel like hopefully they stay true to that mission.
That's a great way to end this
conversation. The question is whether more connected is more open. That's the question.
That is the question. And I like that you left us conversation here on a question there. That's a great way to end this. That's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our community for being part of this conversation and our guests, Mustafa, Amanda, and Noah. This conversation will continue online under #AJStream. But before we go, there's just enough time to wish you all a happy International Women's Day on a day after a show that's brought to you by a team of very talented women, produced by Alona Vixian, booked by Zuleika Hussein, community managed by Nagin Oliai, directed by Katie Van Leer, technical directed by Maddie Finkel, bized graphic operator by Valinda Dickerson, and prompter by Crystal Bart Williams. We're standing on the shoulders of some very talented women themselves. Thanks for being part.